Hello, and welcome to this roundup of historical romance books with the word rake in the title. I'm Olivia, your favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot, and you're watching Random Olive Reads. First up is The Notorious Rake by Mary BALOGH. This is book 3 of the Wait series. It's an older historical romance with a bang of a setup, quite literally. Our two main characters are at the gardens with their friends, total opposites, and get stuck in a thunderstorm while out on a walk together. The lady is absolutely terrified of storms due to a past experience where a tent next to her was struck by lightning and 4 men were killed, so she inevitably has a panic attack. Our two people have found shelter in a covered picnic area, and the gentleman distracts her from the panic by kissing her, and then proceeds to have sex with her. I'm not quite sure that a lady having a panic attack counts as consent in any instance, but this was written in the early 1990s, so let's suspend disbelief for a second. This is all like the first chapter of the book, and then when the storm eases, he brings her to his mistress den and they do it again, with verbal consent this time. And then he proceeds to spend the rest of the book pursuing her, even though she just wants to say, "Thank you, sir, see you again, never." Further on, there's backstory of how he turned into a rake in the first place, and it's actually really sad and really made me feel bad for the guy. So, aside from the crazy pants beginning, it'll give you all of the classic Mary BALOGH feels. To All the Rakes I've Loved Before is a super quick novella that is tied to the Honeycoat series. It is written by Anne Barton, otherwise known as Anna Bennett. Our girl Amelia is a cousin of the Duke's sisters, Olivia and Rose, and a few years ago she was semi publicly jilted when her suitor eloped with someone else. And then she had a stumble and a fall at a ball and was super embarrassed. So now she just stays home and avoids society and writes in her journal. One night, her old suitor comes to her door with his very injured friend in tow. That friend, Stephen, was badly beaten because of gambling debts and needs a place to recover. He stays at Amelia's house for a few days and they grow closer. It's a pretty quick turnaround in priorities for Stephen, who is now trying to court and marry Amelia. This was a fun and quick read within this universe. And The Myth Ran Away with a Rake by Elizabeth Boyle is book 2 of the Rhymes with Love series. Daphne answers a newspaper ad for a wife just to complain about how awful it is to advertise for a wife in the newspaper. Henry responds to Daphne's letters since they're argumentative and intriguing and kind of fun. So both of these people are using false names and don't know that the person that they're writing to is actually an old family enemy. When they make plans to meet, they are confronted with the person that they really should be avoiding, but somehow it turns into these two seemingly running away together. A Rake's Guide to Pleasure by Victoria Dahl is book 2 of the Summer Heart series. Emma is an orphan who is posing as a widowed baroness to gamble her way through London before the season begins. She is trying to save up enough money to escape to a seaside cottage and support herself and her maid. With her scandalous gambling, she has caught the attention of Hart, who is a stern and serious duke with a history of debauched behavior. He insists that she will become his mistress, but she is hesitant and shy about it. There's a lot of chasing each other and bickering in this story, and it seems like Hart is mostly just a distraction from Emma's real goals. He does sort of ultimately redeem himself, but it's a long and humbling road for him. The Spinster and the Rake by Eva Devon is book 1 of the Never a Wallflower series. Georgiana is hiding out in a library during a house party and gets caught there by Edward. Not realizing that he's the Duke, they bicker, they kiss, and then they get caught. Now they need to get married, but Georgiana has no idea how to be a duchess. So Edward's family has to assist with that and give her duchess lessons. I actually don't know that the guy in this story is actually a rake, but this one is a pretty easy, low angst read. Rakes and Radishes by SUSANNA Ives is a standalone novel. We have Henrietta, who is a fanciful, foolish, and selfish girl. She basically hates the small village that she grew up in and longs for a life in London and a love like she reads in her gothic novels. When she finds out that her not quite betrothed is nearly engaged to the diamond of the season, she recruits her farmer neighbor best friend, the Earl of Kesley, who is in love with her and was previously rejected, to wash up, dress better, and seduce the girl away from her beloved. Can she get any more cruel? Somehow they all find their way to London, and there's a lot of back and forth of Kesley and Henrietta fighting their feelings and fighting with each other to the point where Kesley is fed up and snaps. He goes to fix his clothes and hair as recommended and sets out to rake his way through London. By this point, Henrietta has realized her feelings for Kesley, but it's too little too late as he's been heartbroken and now has risen back up as a terrible person. There's drama with his mother and her past love going on in the background, plus whatever happened with Henrietta's first love. I mean, I enjoyed the book overall, but I'm not usually a fan of spoiled, overreaching female main characters. And this guy, after his makeover, he really did turn into a rake. Cold Hearted Rake by Lisa Kleypas is book one of the Ravenel series. Devon Ravenel has inherited an earldom when his cousin Theo dies after being thrown off of a horse. He finds his inherited estate in massive debt, along with three cousins with no dowries and Theo's widow, Kathleen. Devon and Kathleen clash over what to do about the estate, the tenants, Theo's sisters. We get to learn about Kathleen and Theo's previous relationship since he died when they were only married for 3 days. We have Devon's history as a rake, his equally indolent brother West, and we see the two hot tempered leads find their way to each other, even though Kathleen is supposed to still be in mourning for her dead husband. This book does a lot of work in setting up the family members of the rest of the series. And the romance between Kathleen and Devon was kind of mediocre for me because the book spent so much time developing the other characters. I definitely recommend reading this one as a setup to the rest of the series, especially since it starts the relationship of Helen and Reese in the next book of the series, which is like one of my favorites. Plus, you get to see Wes' physical and mental transformation from a sluggish drunk to a contributing member of the family. Only Rakes Would Dare by Charlie Lane is book 5 of the Debutante Dares series. Childhood friends meet again and strike a deal for a fake engagement. Griffin is avoiding passion and emotions at all costs to prevent himself from turning into his rakish father and late brother. Obviously, Griffin is not the rake of the story. Edith is licking her wounds after disastrously trying and failing to compromise another lord. She is much too emotional and spirited to suit Griffin, but he feels his ice walls melting around her, and since he's the only male in her life to treat her with any kindness and respect, she's at too much risk of falling in unrequited love again. Being pushed by others Actually, they're being pushed to marry other people by their fathers, so they strike a bargain for the fake engagement until they realize that their feelings can't really be ignored. And I especially loved how Griffin continually comes to Edith's defense. My Fake Rake by Eva Lee is book one of the Union of the Rakes series. Lady Grace is a bookish researcher interested in reptiles and amphibians, but unfortunately, the gentlemen of the ton are not interested in her as a marriage material. In order to catch the attention of her longtime crush, she recruits her bookish friend Sebastian to play the part of a rake and pay her court. Shy and awkward Sebastian is willing to go along with it, but he struggles with crowds and strange people. Of course, as these two spend more time together, they realize their feelings run deeper than friendship, but each person thinks that the other person is only interested in being friends, so they don't really pursue it. It's just a bad case of both of these people being complete cowards and unwilling to communicate what it is that they really want. The Rake of Tamarix Hall by Georgina North is a standalone novel. This one is a slow burn, enemies to lovers type of romance with a very awkward first meeting. Lucius is a new Marquess and he's on his way to his new estate. He stops in town and already hears gossip about how horrible the old Marquess is and how the new one can't possibly be better. Of course, he finds that a pretty young lady, Cressida, and her sister are the ones gossiping, and they most definitely get off on the wrong foot when the ladies discover who he is. The first half of the book moves pretty slowly with getting to know the family dynamics of each of the characters. We have Lucius, who has a reputation as a rake in London, but he seems to care about his new tenants at his new estate. Cressida has an abusive father and three sisters who have been neglected and not considered out in society despite their ages. Plus, Cressida has had a shady history with the previous heir to the Marquisate. These two argue and bicker every time they encounter each other until finally they're caught in a room together and need to get married to save both of their reputations. From there, we have more arguments and misunderstandings with tons of emotional angst. Despite the slow start of the book, when you realize that Lucius and Cressida are both emotionally invested in the status of their relationship, so are you. Falling for a Rake by PENDLE is book 1 of the Fallen series. We start with a prim and proper lady who hunts for ferns and a rake of a man following her through the woods, trying to flirt with her, even as she politely puts him off. And then they fall down an abandoned mine and get stuck there overnight. Well, now that they're basically ruined, they need to get married. But both of them have secrets from the past, and neither are exactly what they seem. Lady Emily, the daughter of a duke, has been engaged before, but her fiancé had died in a hunting accident, so now Emily doesn't participate in any physically strenuous activities and only hunts ferns and not foxes. But there's something more to the story because she keeps having nightmares about her ex-fiancé. The rakish Earl Oscar has admitted the worst of himself. He has dallied with the younger sister of a woman that he was courting, he got her pregnant, and refused to marry her. The young lady and their illegitimate daughter now live in the country, and he is not a part of their lives. But he's also not exactly the rake that he seems to play in the world. He is kind and caring of Emily. He doesn't actually take advantage of her when they're trapped together. And this book had a lot of interesting reveals of Emily and Oscar's past, presence, and learning to accept each other for who they are. And in the background, there's some meddlesome anonymous gossip writing, a writer adding to the drama. Taming the Rake by Erica Ridley is book 2 of the Lords in Love series. Gladys, a wallflower, is at the Merrywell Matchmaking Festival for the 4th time, and she needs to find a marriage match before her dowry is given to her delightful younger sister. She finds herself kissed in a garden, and she expected a proposal from the handsome gentleman, but he never shows up. She was apparently spotted in her disheveled state, so now she is publicly ruined. Her family cuts her off completely, and she has to survive on her own. 5 years later, she returns to Merrywell to find the man who ruined her and seek revenge. But he's a lot less rakish than he seemed before, and Gladys is at risk of falling in love. I actually enjoyed Gladys's transformation to a confident woman and the development of her relationship with Reuben. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found a book or two to add to your TBR. Links to all of these books are in the description box. Like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.